Hey guys, Brockshot here. Back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. He was a broad shouldered, loose limbed, swarthy fellow of great strength, never in a hurry, and always slouching. He never even seemed to come to his work on purpose, but would slouch in as if by mere accident. And when he went to the Jolly Bargeman to eat his dinner, or went away at night, he would slouch out, like Cain or the Wandering Jew, as if he had no idea where he was going, and no intention of ever coming back. He lodged at a sluice keeper's out on the marshes, and on working days would come slouching from his hermitage, with his hands in his pockets, and his dinner loosely tied in a bundle round his neck and dangling on his back. On Sundays he mostly lay all day on the sluice gates, or stood against ricks and barns. He always slouched, locomotively, with his eyes on the ground, and, when accosted, or otherwise required to raise them, he looked up in a half resentful, half puzzled way, as though the only thought he ever had was that it was rather an odd and injurious fact that he should never be thinking. The morose gentleman had no liking for me. When I was very small and timid, he gave me to understand that the devil lived in a black corner of the forge, and that he knew the fiend very well. Also, that it was necessary to make up the fire once in 7 years with a live boy, and that I might consider myself fuel. When I became Joe's prentice, Orlick was perhaps confirmed in some suspicion that I should displace him, howbeit he liked me still less. Not that he ever said anything, or did anything, openly importing hostility. I only noticed that he always beat his sparks in my direction, and that whenever I sang Old Clem, he came in out of time. Doge Orlick was at work and present next day, when I reminded Joe of my half holiday. He said nothing at the moment, for he and Joe had just got a piece of hot iron between them, and I was at the bellows, but by and by he said, leaning on his hammer, "Now, master, sure you're not a going to favor only one of us. If young Pip has a half holiday, do as much for old Orlick." I suppose he was about 25, but he usually spoke of himself as an ancient person. "Why, what'll you do with a half holiday, if you get it?" said Joe. "What'll I do with it? What'll he do with it? I'll do as much with it as him," said Orlick. "As to Pip, he's going uptown," said Joe. "Well then, as to old Orlick, he's a going uptown," retorted that worthy. "Two can go uptown. T'an't only one Watt can go uptown." "Don't lose your temper," said Joe. "Shall I if I like?" growled Orlick. "Some and their uptowning. Now, master, come. No favoring in this shop. Be a man." The master refusing to entertain the subject until the journeyman was in a better temper, Orlick plunged at the furnace, drew out a red-hot bar, made at me with it as if he were going to run it through my body, whisked it round my head, laid it on the anvil, hammered it out, as it were. I thought, and the sparks were my spurting blood, and finally said, when he had hammered himself hot and the iron cold, and he again leaned on his hammer, "Now, master!" "Are you all right now?" demanded Joe. "Ah, I'm all right," said the gruff old Orlick. "Then, as in general you stick to your work as well as most men," said Joe, "let it be a half holiday for all." My sister had been standing silent in the yard, within hearing. She was a most unscrupulous spy and listener, and she instantly looked in at one of the windows. "Like you fool," said she to Joe, "giving holidays to great idle hulkers like that. You are a rich man, upon my life, to waste wages in that way. I wish I was his master." "You'd be everybody's master if you durst," retorted Orlick, with an ill-favored grin. "Let her alone," said Joe. "I'd be a match for all noodles and all rogues," returned my sister, beginning to work herself into a mighty rage. "And I couldn't be a match for noodles without being a match for your master, who's the dunder-headed king of the noodles. And I couldn't be a match for the rogues without being a match for you, who are the blackest looking and the worst rogue between this and France. Now!" "You're foul shrew, Mother Gaudry," growled the journeyman. "If that makes a judge of rogues, you ought to be a good un." "Let her alone, will you?" said Joe. "What did you say?" cried my sister, beginning to scream. "What did you say? What did that fellow Orlick say to me, Pip? What did he call me, with my husband standing by? Oh, oh, oh!" Each of these exclamations was a shriek, and I must remark of my sister, what is equally true of all the violent women I have ever seen, that passion was no excuse for her. It was as undeniable that instead of lapsing into passion, she consciously and deliberately took extraordinary pains to force herself into it, and became blindly furious by regular stages. "What was the name he gave me before the base man who swore to defend me? Oh, hold me! Oh!" "Ah!" growled the journeyman between his teeth. "I'd hold you, if you was my wife. I'd hold you under the pump and choke it out of you." "I tell you, let her alone," said Joe. "Oh, to hear him!" cried my sister, with a clap of her hands and a scream together, which was her next stage. "To hear the names he's giving me. That Orlick, in my own house. Me, a married woman, with my husband standing by. Oh, oh!" Here, my sister, after a fit of clappings and screamings, beat her hands upon her bosom and upon her knees, and threw her cap off, and pulled her hair down, which were the last stages of her road to frenzy. Being by this time a perfect fury and a complete success, she made a dash at the door, which I had unfortunately locked. What could the wretched Joe do now, after his disregarded parenthetical interruptions, but stand up to his journeyman and ask him what he meant by interfering betwixt himself and Mrs. Joe, and further, whether he was man enough to come on. Old Orlick felt that the situation admitted of nothing less than coming on, and was on his defense straight away. So, without so much as pulling off their singed and burnt aprons, they went at one another, like two giants. But if any man in that neighborhood could stand up long against Joe, I never saw the man. Orlick, as if he had been of no more account than the pale young gentleman, was very soon among the coal dust, and in no hurry to come out of it. Then Joe unlocked the door and picked up my sister, who had dropped insensible at the window, but who had seen the first fight, I think, and who was carried into the house and laid down, and who was recommended to revive, and would do nothing but struggle and clench her hands in Joe's hair. Then came that singular calm and silence which succeeded all uproars, and then, with the vague sensation which I have always connected with such a lull, namely that it was Sunday, and somebody was dead, I went upstairs to dress myself. When I came down again, I found Joe and Orlick sweeping up, without any traces of discomposure than a slit in one of Orlick's nostrils, which was neither expressive nor ornamental. A pot of beer had appeared from the Jolly Bargeman, and they were sharing it by turns in a peaceable manner. The lull had a sedative and philosophical influence on Joe, who followed me out into the road to say, as a parting observation that might do me good, "On the rampage, Pip, and off the rampage, Pip. Such is life." With what absurd emotions, for we think... excuse me. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That's a greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.